Okay, we're going to continue our lesson on domain and range, discussing the other notations we're going to be using this semester and next semester as well. Go ahead and take a few moments to copy this. If we're in class, I'll go ahead and pause it. Otherwise, you can pause it yourself. Okay, so we've talked about set notation, which is the one up here. So this one you should already be somewhat familiar with, okay? If you look at the one right below it, algebraic inequality, this one is actually really simple because it's already embedded in the set notation. So if you can do this one, all you need to do is copy pretty much this piece right here, and that will give you the algebraic inequality. Pretty much it's just this without all the fanciness, okay? The interval notation is the one we're going to focus on mostly today, simply because you probably haven't seen it. It's actually quite simple. Some people find it easier than these two because all you need are two numbers and then parentheses or brackets, depending on the situation. Okay. And finally, we have verbally, which is a verbal description of whatever the domain or range is. This can vary as long as it makes sense. I'll accept it. Okay. So in this example that I gave here, my set notation was x is greater than 9 for all x in the set. So my algebraic inequality again is just the same thing, x is greater than 9 minus all the fancy stuff. Okay. My interval notation, in this one, if just to give you a quick run through, it sometimes helps if we do a number line. So I'm going to draw a number line here on the side. You don't have to, you don't want to, because we're going to go more into it in a little bit, but I'm going to go with the algebraic inequality just because that one is easier for me to graph. We have the point 9, and because there's no line underneath, I know that it's an open circle. Okay, that's why I did not color it in. It says x is greater than 9, so that means I would be shading to the right. Okay, so the reason I'm drawing this number line is because for interval notation, we do need to have two numbers as part of our answer. So in this one, I already have the 9, and I see that this is going forever in the positive direction, therefore it's going to infinity. So with the number line, I can get my two numbers, 9 and infinity, and there they are. Okay. Because this is an open circle, we use what we call a parentheses because there's no concrete number. Okay. So let me get a little bit more into that interval notation, just so there's no confusion. Okay. So the trick with interval notation is to know pretty much when to use a bracket and when to use a parentheses. Okay. So I'm going to put some conditions here. This one does use two numbers always. Okay. And it also uses brackets and parentheses, not to be confused with the curly braces we talked about before. Okay. Curly braces are used for sets, and brackets are used for stuff like this. Okay. So right underneath, I'm just going to go ahead and draw what I mean by a bracket. This is a bracket, okay, and this is a parentheses. They can be swapped depending on the problem. For brackets, we use them if there is a closed circle. Okay, so closed. And for parentheses, we use if there's an open circle or infinity. Oh, sorry about that. Okay, so of course, infinity implies negative infinity as well. If you do have any of the infinities, we can go ahead and use that parentheses. Okay. So let me just give you some examples because this is the best way to show this is pretty much through an example. Let's say I have the inequality of -5 less than or equal to x less than 2. Okay. In interval notation, I would look at my numbers, okay, and write them down. So I have -5, comma, 2. I would then proceed to look at what I have here. So I have this symbol and I have this symbol. You should have learned a long time ago that this means closed circle, meaning the point is defined, and this means open circle, meaning there is not exactly a point there, okay? So because of that, this one would be a bracket, and this one would be a parenthesis. And voila, that's it. You're done with this, okay? While we're at it, let me go ahead and give the verbal description on the side, just so we're a little clear on how that works. This problem here, okay, verbally could be something like x values lie between -5 and 2, not including 2. And of course, I'm just kind of improvising here. There are several ways you could say this. I do have to make sure that I put that not including 2 simply because that's an open circle, which means that on the graph, 2 is not part of the domain. Okay? If you have any questions, again, please let me know. Let's go and look at another example. This time we'll do a fancier graph. Let's do something, I don't know, like something crazy like that. Okay? Let's say that this point over here is -1, -2. And this point over here we'll say is 6, I don't know, 3. Okay? Since we've been talking about domain and range, let's go ahead and do that for this problem. So I'm going to put my domain here, and I'm going to include all the different sets just so we can kind of review everything at once. So my set notation, okay, I still have to look at the left and right. So if I do that, I see that I start at -1 and I end at 6. So I'm going to start with my curly braces and say x such that, and then I have -1 first. So -1 is less than x is less than 6. Okay, I always do this first and then I go back and check to see if there's an open circle, closed circle. Okay, so at this point over here, -1, it's a closed circle, which means I'm going to have that line here. At 6, open circle, which means I don't have to do anything here. Okay, moving on, algebraically. Well, this one is easy because, as I mentioned before, it's already embedded here. This is the algebraic part right here, the inequality. So all I need to do is copy it over. -1 less than or equal to x less than 6. Okay? And now finally, the one I was talking about earlier, interval notation. So I'm just going to put interval for time purposes. This one, I look at the endpoints again, which I already marked for me, -1 and 6. Okay, so -1, comma 6. And then I look at the closed circle and open circle. Closed circle again means we have a bracket, and open circle means we have a parenthesis. And that's it. Okay. Some verbal description I could use for this would be something like x values are between -1 and 6, but less than 6. Something like that. Something that implies that we're not including 6 in the domain. Okay. For the range, same concept, but now we're going to talk about, well, the y values because, again, range is y. So for my set notation, I make sure I put my little curly braces, y such that, and I'm going to look at the other values. So I'll go ahead and do 2 lines for that. So -2 and 3. So -2 less than or equal to y less than 3. Okay. My algebraic, I'm just going to jump right into it, is the same as this. So -2 less than or equal to y less than 3. And finally, my interval is between -2 and 3, bracket, parentheses.